The Gators and Dogs, we're getting ready for another edition of Riding Home. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION today. I want to make sure y'all get these. We're hitting the holiday season. The link is down below. Make sure you pick it up today. It's our 80-page look at Georgia's national championship run in the 2001 season. There's lots of images in here that you're not going to see anywhere else. There's images from everyone well, I don't think Matt has an image in here, but Ryan has some for sure. And anyway, it's an awesome gift for loved ones. Georgia and Florida. Matt, we're going to start with you. The Gators coming to this thing as a 22-point dog. That's the largest I can find in history for this series, either side. Your comments.
Yeah, I like Georgia to cover, and I explained a little bit more in Final Feelings. But I think Georgia matches up really well in this game. I know Florida can run the ball a little bit, and they have their best offensive lineman returning, Osiris Torrance. But they're not very good defensively. They're one of the worst teams, I think, in the country and maybe in the SEC in third down defense. I think the tight ends are going to have a big game. They don't know how to cover the tight ends in the middle of the field. My Florida buddy told me if Ventrell Miller and Amari Burney are trying to cover Brock Bowers, it's game over. I just think that they don't match up well, and they're struggling a little bit. Georgia, a little healthier now. I don't think we're going to see Jalen Carter and probably a few other guys. It's probably for the best, but I like where Georgia sits coming into this game. They've got this final stretch of the season where they can show everyone that, hey, we're still top dog. We're still number one in the country. And Kirby Smart, he doesn't like Florida. He knows this is a big game, and I think they're going to come out and play really, really well down there.
Right.
Yeah, the bye week is almost always the week before the Florida game. But in this particular season, I think it was perfectly placed because the stretch that Georgia has over the next few weeks is a really difficult one, even if they are the better team in all of those matchups. But as far as Florida goes, I just have watched enough of them to see that they're not completely put together. It's year one in Billy Napier's scheme. I do think that they've maybe made little steps in the right direction, when you're turning over to a new coach and everything. But I just don't know that it's an offense that's going to be able to put up the points necessary against. They haven't seen a defense like Georgia's yet, and that's the case when teams play Georgia. They're playing a defense like that for the first time usually. But in Florida's case, I have a hard time seeing them just put up points against that Dogs defense. And Georgia has one of the most efficient offenses in the country. I think total it's a top 10 offense. I think they're top 5 in a few categories. So I have a hard time seeing this be a struggle for Georgia, and we've seen them have moments of struggle earlier in the season, but I don't think that happens against Florida. They're not in the same world right now, the two programs. They're just not. It's not a competitive rivalry, and Georgia's really owned it since Kirby Smart's been around. It hasn't been much outside of those one or two games and the weird 2020 season. But right now, Georgia's just in a much better spot.
So I do want to touch on this just for a little bit. And the vast majority of this is the ascent of the Vols, who certainly the win over Alabama made people pay a lot of attention to them. And now the talking heads on ESPN who, let's listen, I just want to be clear about this. I don't think there's like a conspiracy at ESPN. I'm not one of these folks that gets real riled up about stuff. But I do think what they say is very good entertainment. 3 of the 4 guys on Tuesday night had Ohio State as the number 1 team in the country, not Georgia. 3 of the 4 had the Dogs at number 3, if I'm not mistaken, behind Tennessee, which leads me to ask this question. I'll start with Ryan. This has got to be the most forgotten number 1 team in the country, the Dogs, heading into October that I can recall. I mean, all the focus lately has been on Tennessee, perhaps with good reason. And obviously, I think Ohio State is very much a team, I've talked about this for some time now, that can win the national championship. Georgia is not on the front burner for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I don't think that there's been a total consensus across the national media for the entire season. I know there was a week or two where it felt like everyone was pointing in the direction of thinking Georgia was number 1, but there's been a few people that they vote for Ohio State, or there's a few people that voted for Bama, and Bama was one there for a second. There never really was a consensus. If I sit down and watch all the games, and I do watch a lot of the games through these 7-8 weeks. I think top to bottom, Georgia's the best team in the country. I think Ohio State looks the flashiest, and Tennessee has a really great win over Alabama, where a lot of eyeballs are on you, and a lot of people see that and take that. So I mean, Georgia still has the best win to me. The 49-3 win over Oregon. I don't know if it's super close. To me, that's the best win in college football this year. Oregon's been a really good football team since then. And Bo Nix has played. He's been good, Bo Nix, for the most part since that game. The first committee rankings will come out here in less than a week. This coming Tuesday, and we'll get a better idea of who the opinions that really matter, what they think. But most people are going to say Ohio State or Georgia, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer. Just from what I've watched, Georgia's the best team in the country.
Yeah, Georgia almost lost to Missouri, and I think that is still in everyone's heads a little bit. I thought they were going to lose early in that fourth quarter, but Georgia does have two really impressive wins. Like Ryan said, the win over Oregon, I think, is the best in the country. The way they dominated South Carolina, who is a current top 25 team now, it's looking like one of the best wins in college football again. So we've seen Georgia play not so great at times. Most of the time, they've been really good. When I look at things, I just don't see one great team in college football. I think Georgia's really good. I think Ohio State's really good. I think Tennessee has a great offense. They're not a great team. Michigan's really good. They're not great. So I understand why people would try to put Ohio State and possibly Tennessee up there, but I'm not buying into it. I think Georgia's number 1-2 team.
Hey, Matt, who would you take between Tennessee and let's say they played this game in Cincinnati, Michigan and Tennessee? Who would you pick to win that game?
Probably Tennessee. Probably Tennessee.
Ryan?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a blowout. It's not a blowout.
Yeah, that's a curious question. I do think that. So again, I'm not. There are folks. My statements are based on criticism, not on. We kind of people go too hard in on ESPN sometimes, I think. But I do. And I am glad to criticize them. I think the number one thing that was said the other night was from Kirk Herbstreit, which was watch the games. And I think if you do watch the games, it's hard to say Tennessee's better than Georgia. The other thing that I know I take very seriously are the betting markets. Ohio State is the very narrow favorite to win the national championship right now. I do think that has something to do with the fact that Georgia still has to play Tennessee and Alabama, both. Ohio State basically has to play Michigan, and that's it. That Clemson is the fourth. Well, actually now Tennessee. Well, what am I looking at here? So it's a cluster after Alabama. Ohio State is the 1. Georgia is the 2. Alabama is about half the odds that Georgia wins it. And then you fall off a cliff. And when you fall off that cliff, you find Clemson, Tennessee, and Michigan all in the same basic, 1,600 to win it, which means if you place a bet, if I'm not mistaken, if you place a bet for $100, you'd win $1,600. So I don't think that's a great bet. I do not think Clemson's going to win the national championship. Does anyone on here think that Tennessee will win the national championship? Does anyone here think that Tennessee will win the league?
It's possible, but I wouldn't put money on it right now. No.
No, I would. I mean, if you ask me today, Georgia's going to win the SEC.
Okay, Matt?
I think Georgia's the best team in the country, so I would say they would win the SEC too.
Oh, so we're just going full homer here. Everybody here thinks
not homer. I think Georgia's
the truth, dude.
Yeah.
They're number
truths. 1. I mean,
well, I think I don't know if they're the best team in the country, but they're not the third best team in the country. It's either them or Ohio State.
I watched Ohio State a little closer this time last week in the bye week, and like they put up points. They're not really being challenged. It's real easy for CJ Stroud and those receivers. I mean, a lot of the times he just drops back, he looks for a second, and then there's a guy just wide open. He's not looking past his first read very often. If you watch that, it's just there. And when they play a better defense, Penn State's a better team when they play. This game is going to be a good eyeball test for Ohio State. I don't know
Dude,
top to bottom that they're as good as Georgia, but they can score.
they can score. Tennessee can score for sure too. If they don't absolutely hammer Penn State, it's same way with Georgia and the Gators.
Yeah.
I don't know about winning
I'm
by
with
30.
you.
I'm just saying it should be obvious. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think they should beat Penn State by a pretty good margin. Like Georgia, they can kind of struggle a little bit out of the gate and mess around in the first quarter and sometimes the second half. But again, like Georgia, when they start putting it on, they can really score in a hurry and just dominate teams. And they've done that a lot in the second half, like Georgia has. So kind of similar teams in a way. I definitely think it's kind of 1A, 1B. They're both really good. I don't think Tennessee is going to get upset by Kentucky at home at 7 p.m. in Neyland. I think I've seen a lot of people say that might be a close game, this and that. I think Tennessee should roll on Kentucky, too, at night up there the way they're playing. So I do think Ryan is right. We're going to see a lot from these teams this week. How good is Michigan? They should dominate Michigan State and in-state rivalry. We'll see. Yeah, and I think they will, too. So is TCU going to struggle at West Virginia? Tough place to play. They're undefeated right now. I think they're playing good football. Alabama has LSU. If they win that game out there, that's going to be a really impressive win the way LSU's playing right now. So we're going to find out a ton about these top 7 teams and have a better understanding of who, what the playoff picture might be after this weekend.
Hey, we're not going to, we're a long way into this thing, but I do want to just say this real quick. I think you're right about people discussing Georgia, Missouri, and there's correct. The criticism is not incorrect. But if you're going to do that, you can't skip the fact that Tennessee beat the Gators by 5 at home, and
Pitt
and the Pitt game, which was in overtime. So, all right. We were talking earlier about Ohio State, and this will speak to Florida, Tennessee, everybody. Georgia's got to play from here on out. I'll give you a chance to answer this question. I'll go to Ryan first. How many plays has Georgia's defense given up over 25 yards, just a singular play at any time in their 7 games? Ryan, you have to have a guess.
7.
Okay, Matt?
3.
Wow, y'all are really making them out to be Supermen. No, it's been 13. Oregon didn't have any. Samford had 1. South Carolina had 3, and they scored a touchdown. Kent State had 3. Missouri had 5. All right. Auburn had 1. Do you remember that play?
A scramble.
It was the touchdown, right?
It was the touchdown, exactly.
The touchdown late. Yeah.
And then Vanderbilt didn't have any. So when you think about Georgia's path forward here, it will be heavily reliant on their defense. But any guesses as to how many 25-yard plays the offense has had? Y'all want to guess that? How many plays?
Is it more or less? Is it more?
It's more than
a lot
13.
more, I think.
It's significantly more, I would say.
25.
Right.
I was going to go 22.
They have had 34 plays, so nearly 3 times as many as they've given up. I've watched the Gators a lot this week, and I actually, I know y'all like to take big turds on Anthony Richardson, but I'll tell you, he certainly has the physical attributes. The way he can throw the ball, there's not a lot of people that can throw it like he can. The scramble, I think, and I've talked about this a lot, and I'll go to Matt. It's the playing quarterback part. That's what's hard for him. But all the tools, I get it. I understand why people would talk about him being a first-round guy.
Yeah, he can be dangerous, and that's a big guy who can run really, really fast. But he's completing 56% of his passes, and it's not going to get easier against this Georgia defense. So, like you said, being able to stay in the pocket, first guy's not there, second guy's not there. Do I find the third guy? Can I hit a deep ball when a guy is blitzing, free, coming at me in my face? It's the little things. Going to the running back who's wide open instead of trying to force something down the field. That's where I think he's going to struggle. And last year's defense is obviously not this year's. Both teams are different in a way, but I think Georgia knows how to corral him. They know the plan to not let him escape and do what he does best. So I expect him to maybe not get a ton of sacks, but keep him in the pocket, corral him, and then have their DBs do what they do. And he doesn't have a lot of help. I think he's got some quality running backs, ETN, and I'm blanking on the other kid's name.
He's not. Their running
up.
backs are not bad.
Yeah. I don't think he has a lot to throw to, so he doesn't have a ton of help on the outside. And he's got, some guys healthier on the offensive line compared to in the last few weeks. So it's going to be tough, but I get it. He's 6'4", 225, 230, runs like a deer, and he can sling it 75 yards if he has to. And I don't think he's going to put it where he wants to. Obviously, he's inaccurate, but like you said, the tools are there. You can't let him do what he wants to do, or else this is going to be a lot closer game than we expect.
Hey, Ryan, the Gators have given up 5 sacks this season. That's not much. I mean, that's number 5 in the country. That's pretty good.
Georgia's only sacked the quarterback 8-ish times, something like that.
I think 7.
Yeah.
So, but that's been a big talking point over the last few weeks in these press conferences. They've played a lot of mobile quarterbacks. They are scheming for Georgia's pass rush. Quarterbacks are getting the ball out fast. It's tough to sack people like Robbie Ashford and Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix, and even Spencer Rattler's got legs.
Oregon's number 1 in the country in sacks allowed.
That is half, if not more than half, because Bo Nix can just get out of there in a half a second. So I don't think this is about sacking Anthony Richardson. I think this is about containment. I think this is about making sure that he's not breaking to the edge and making something happen. I think it's about, maintaining assignments downfield and making sure that he doesn't have the opportunity to maybe get one of those big plays. But I very much don't see the draft prospect aspect of this all. Those things that Matt listed as little things, I don't even really think those are little things. Those are just things that make you a good quarterback or not. I mean, and he doesn't do most of that stuff. If you watch him and if you look at the numbers, I mean, not effective in the passing game almost at all. And you can see how that affects. I mean, he was even like 50-something% against Tennessee when he had the 400-something yards. But there's games where he has more interceptions than touchdowns, and over the season he has more interceptions than touchdowns. I don't see how he just has some masterclass game against a defense that we saw demolish him last year, made him look silly last year. I mean, that's just the truth. It's not being harsh.
No, I mean, I do wonder, y'all. I do wonder a little bit that. Has Georgia played the worst game it's going to play? Because it feels like maybe they have. And
Kirby definitely doesn't think they played their best. He said that on Tuesday, I believe.
Well, if they've not played their best game, and they beat Oregon and South Carolina, who are both ranked, and by a combined 97-10, he did say that. I don't know if that's true or not.
I think he was talking a little bit more about defense versus just the general team. But I mean, they're swallowing guys again.
Yeah, I mean, they are an exceptionally good defense. They are not what they were a year ago, but that is the wrong,
That's not the way to look at it, though. It's this year. What are they this year?
Well, and everything is in front of Georgia. And when you look at where they're at with everything, they're the number 4 total defense in the country. Scoring defense, they're slightly better, which is number 2 in the country at not even 9 points a game. I would imagine they will probably take over from Illinois this week, but we'll see. I don't see Las Vegas has this game, Matt, at somewhere around 39 to, I think it's 39-18 or 39, something like that. Do you see the Gators scoring 20 on offense?
No.
I don't either.
No, I don't. I think they'll barely get to 10. So just a little hint for final feelings there. I think they're really going to struggle. And Kirby wants that shutout against Florida at some point. It's not going to happen on Saturday, but that's going to be their mentality. They want to come out and, I mean, remember what he said in the locker room last week. He's going to have them playing, your hardest every single play, demolish them, bash their skulls in. I mean, he wants them to play lights out, and they're going to come out with fire. This is Florida. I don't care how bad they are. I don't care if, where the programs are right now. It's still Georgia, Florida, and they're going to come out and play their absolute best. That's what I expect. So,
Ryan?
I don't think there's a team he hates more than the Florida Gators. And, that halftime speech leaked last year.
Yeah.
But
that's in the book.
Look,
Go ahead.
but another thing that he said last year was, we're not here to beat anyone. We're here to beat everyone. I mean, that's how they are going to approach every game. I think this one may be a little bit more personal for him. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of success against them as a player.
No, he had one win.
So,
he had one win.
And that definitely, he definitely still thinks about that sometimes.
He played really well in that game, I think.
He did. He had 2 interceptions, and yeah, he did play well. They all played, generally speaking, they played pretty well in that game. That game was hard to understand, just as someone who was at the game. We got there late. There's a lot of different reasons. By the time we got in there, Georgia was already up 7-0, and Hines Ward, I think, it had a very long kickoff return, and I think that game was a master class from Jim Donnan on how to, when to go for it. Florida was not in a good place, I'll say that. But when you have 2 NFL running backs in your backfield, really 3 with Patrick, you run them, and Georgia did. And Mike Bobo, who I think was a very good quarterback for quarterbacks in the SEC in the 90s, he wasn't asked to do a ton in that game. And they used Robert, they used Orlando Scary, they used Patrick Pass, they used what they had, and Hines played really well in that game. Georgia's stars played well in that game, and Florida, they only scored 17 points in that game, y'all. But they played 3 quarterbacks. Noah Brandeis played in that game. He's probably selling insurance somewhere. But no, I mean, that sounds bad, but
it happens. Well, real quick, Dane, usually when Georgia beats Florida, it's because they're running the ball and running over them. There's only been a few select times where Georgia's won this game throwing the ball. I mean, David Green threw the ball well in 2004. We saw Aaron Murray in 2011 make some key 4th down throws. Jake Fromm had some nice game against the Gators throwing the ball. But you go back to the Herschel days, Keith Worley, Tim Worley, Keith Henderson in the late 80s. There's just a lot of games, like you said, 97, where the team who runs the ball the most and gets the most rushing yards more often than not, I think almost every time, unless I'm wrong, wins this game.
Well, with the exception of 2020, and I think even in that game, maybe the Gators had more yards. I know they didn't, but they had enough. And and it's gonna be hard to run on Georgia. I mean, no matter who you are. And but this is a good. I'll tell you right now, the running backs for the Gators, they are the real deal to me. ETN is a troublemaker. Richardson clearly can run the ball effectively from his spot. I just don't know if they can execute the way they need to. Their 3rd down, Ryan, the Gators, they are one of the worst teams on 3rd down in the country. I mean, it's really bad on defense. They are second to last in the country at 130th on 3rd down conversion. They're permitting 53. They are permitting 53% of 3rd downs to become 1st downs. And I don't know what the metrics are on. Is it 3rd and short? But that is really bad. Really bad.
Their 3rd down defense?
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be more up to Georgia to just not get to 3rd down a lot. I mean, are they going to fly down the field the way we've seen them fly down the field a few times this year? Is this a more physical game? I think it's probably maybe closer to a more physical game. Even when Georgia was blowing people out, left and right last year, and Florida was bad last year, this was still, it was a blowout, but it wasn't like a 50 to nothing type of game. It was, 34-7. And so, I think it's probably closer to something like that again. I think they will try to establish a ground game. I think this could be a big Dejan Edwards game. Just a guy that gets better with more touches, a guy that's physical. Zamir White has had some success against Florida, and he was the more physical runner of the last couple of years. He had that long one in 2020 that obviously ended up not mattering. But he had a big touchdown again last year. I definitely think that the ground game is going to be an emphasis, but it's going to be up to Georgia just to not get into those third down situations in the first place. You don't want to be in that whether Florida's third down defense is awful or not.
Matt, I think Matt's point about the running backs is really one of the big things. I mean, when you think about not just Zamir, but everybody that's played at Georgia, DeAndre Swift killed the Gators over time.
No Sean Marino, over 200 yards that game.
Well, it was right at 200. That was another game where Florida, the thing about Georgia and Florida is if you look through history, it does kind of go through spurts where one team dominates for about 20 years. And, we are either right in the middle or right at the beginning of another 20-year run because Florida's run really ended in 11, I would say. And so they went from 90 to 11. I think Georgia won 3 times in that entire time, or 2, whatever it was. No, it was 97, 04, and 07. That was it. And since the 11 game, I think Mark Richt changed the series. I mean, it took a while, but the other thing too, and I know we're going long here, but Florida has had its own issues for years, and they hope that Billy Napier solves that. But, since Steve Spurrier left, they have essentially had, I would say, 2 successful coaches. One left, Urban Meyer, and the other, Dan Mullen, was run out of town. When you think of Ron Zook, Will Muschamp, that didn't work. Neither of those 2 worked. Jim McElwain, that didn't work. And then, Mullen, now we see Billy Napier. Florida has been through a lot of coaches. This century, essentially, Georgia's had 2 coaches. Florida's had like 5, I think it is. So they've not found the right person. They did with Urban. He fit them. He just didn't want to be there, and he used his health as an excuse. This is what he does. But Georgia's been the more stable program, and it can't be surprising that they have been and therefore have been better over the last, say, 10 years. Again, the Gators have had, since 10, they've had Urban, Muschamp, McElwain, Mullen, and now Napier. It's a lot of coaches, and Georgia's had 2. So the Gators have actually had 7 coaches this century, because I left out Spurrier as well as Ron Zook. 7 coaches in a 21-year period. Y'all can do the math. That's not a very long tenure of guys, but Billy just started, so we'll just see how it goes. All right, Matt's got the Dogs covering. Ryan, what'd you say?
Yeah, I didn't say in here, but yeah, I got them covering.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick them to cover as well. I almost made them my lock of the week. My lock of the week is actually our fine feathered friends in Columbia. I think that line is just too low for me. They're playing Missouri, who is good on defense. I will say that, but they're just not great. They struggled at home with Vanderbilt this past week. Only won by 7 in Middle Earth. Not great. Final thoughts, Matt? Are your Phillies going to get it done?
No. Stroh's all day. I hope they cheat so bad. Do whatever they did a few years ago. Do all the cheating. Beat the Phillies. I can't see it. The Eagles are playing well. The Phillies have this magic juice that the Braves had last year. It has that same type of feeling. The Astros are better, top to bottom.
Does it have the juice?
Corn?
Does it have the juice?
Yeah. The corn juice, whatever type of juice, it's working.
No one gets my joke.
I got the joke.
Is that a TikTok thing?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a reach, but yeah, I got it.
Well, I mean, we hope to be a halfway intelligent podcast. Go ahead, Ryan. What you got? Are your Birds going to get it done this week? The Falcons have not played horrible.
They got no secondary, Ryan.
But they're hanging in there. That division is terrible. That division is terrible.
No, the division is still up for grabs. The secondary was playing well. They just really banged up right now. And I think the defense is really not as bad as people are saying. There's a lot of problems that are long-term fixes still. I mean, they need someone that can just sling the rock. I mean, watching the offensive scheme it's outdated, and that
For the Falcons.
Yeah, Arthur Smith's offensive schemes, but if they're winning games, they're winning games. But I would prefer to have someone drop back and be able to throw over 300 yards. I mean, Mariota threw like 6 times in the first half last week.
Yeah. You're going to say something, Matt, and I have one question for one last question.
I was going to say, I think they have to because they got the backs to do it right now. And so if the plan is working, keep up with it. But Desmond Ritter's not the guy either, though.
Well, I don't think Desmond Ritter's the guy either, but we won't know until he plays.
Right. I think
we won't really know until he plays. Well, I think they're going to within the next few weeks here. I think that's coming.
All right, very, very. I'll stick with Ryan. What is the solution at Texas A&M?
The solution?
Is that your answer? Because that might be a good answer.
That's my answer.
Matt, what should Texas A&M do?
I don't get the fascination around. I guess they're easy to make fun of and laugh at, but they've never won anything. And so now everyone's just on them about how they're not winning. They've never won anything. So there's another Texas A&M year. Maybe recruit better. You know, it's kind of a joke after last year's class. But they got to get rid of Jimbo. And he's not the answer. This is year 5, year 6. Every year I think this might be the year they're pretty good. No, this is the year they're pretty good. They're still not any good.
I don't know. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you down at the cocktail party.